Welcome to Whole Team Eats Podcast, a 24/8 media production. Ever wonder who trains your favorite athlete? Join Tim Miller as he takes a look at the behind-the-scenes training of professional and collegiate athletes. Tim connects with trainers, athletes, and others in the sports community to share their stories. This podcast is dedicated to highlighting the work of athletes and trainers to inspire action and build community.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to an all-new episode of Whole Team Eats Podcast. This is episode 13, season 1. I'm your host, Tim Miller, and on this show, I sit down with Coy Flynn of Pinnacle Performance. Coy grew up in a small town in Indiana that instead of a one-stoplight town, he refers to it as a one-stop sign town. Coy and the rest of his classmates had to play multiple sports just to have enough players for each team. It was apparent that from a young age, Coy had a passion for sports and training, but Coy ran into several roadblocks when trying to turn his passion into a career. On the show, we discuss how graduating with his master's in the middle of the pandemic and having his first job offer rescinded fueled him to explore every option and try something he otherwise might not have. Pinnacle was an opportunity to grow as a trainer while also expanding a gym and building a business in the process. After 2 years at Pinnacle, Coy helped expand their facility and now has trained several notable professional and collegiate athletes such as Evan Engram, Andrew Thomas, and BJ Ojulari. It's my pleasure to introduce Coy Flynn from Pinnacle Performance. Coy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited to get to talk to you, man. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're very interested in hearing your background. You're a little bit younger or earlier in your career than some of the other trainers that we've had on the show to this point. But why don't you tell us, just to start off, about how the off-season training was in 2022?
2022. So just this past off-season. Was awesome. It was so much fun. To me, this was, from an athlete standpoint, from an intern standpoint, just this past summer, this whole past off season, to me was so much fun and one of the best ones that we've had. We had a ton of guys in this off season, which made it a lot of fun. Guys like Andrew Thomas, guys like Evan Engram, and a few more guys. I'm sure I'm going to forget to mention a couple names, but it was a lot of fun. The guys came in, worked hard every day, got after it, and we had the best class of interns I think we've ever had this past summer. And it was really a blessing to have them and to have their help. And just for everybody to be able to come in and be energetic every day, that's what made it so much fun, man. I love the culture that we have here. And it never feels like work. So it's always so much fun every day. So this past off season was awesome, and it's been a lot of fun just getting to watch those guys play this year. And Andrew's killing it right now. All the guys are doing great. So we're very proud of them.
And doing something that doesn't feel like work every day is important. Finding a career that you love, and obviously when it comes to training, it seems like you really enjoy what you do on a daily basis. So we're going to get more into the training side of things in a little bit, but I really wanted to start kind of telling our listeners about your background, who Coy Flynn is, more than just a trainer, but where you grew up. Did you play sports? Did you play in college? Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a Hoosier, born and raised. I grew up in Indiana, small town Indiana. A lot of people mention that they grew up in a one-stoplight town. I mentioned that I grew up in a one-stop sign town because we didn't even have stoplights where I grew up. That's how small the town was. So I was a three-sport athlete growing up. At the school I went to, we had to have kids play multiple sports, otherwise we may not have had enough kids to fill the team. Right. I played baseball, basketball, football growing up, and then went on to play college baseball. I went to a small college in Franklin, Indiana, played baseball, also got the long jump a little bit while I was there, so that was a really cool experience. And just part of that, I was, 4 years studied exercise science, kinesiology at Franklin while playing baseball there, and then after leaving Franklin, went on to Michigan State. So I'm a big Sparty fan now. I grew up a Hoosier, but now I'm a big Sparty fan. I did 2 years of master's work at MSU, studied sport performance, human performance, whatever you want to classify it as. And then after graduating, or while I was at MSU, I got to work with a lot of amazing coaches, guys like Eric Cressy, Tim Wakeham, Molly, all the coaches who I got to mentor under and just be a part of and be in different weight rooms with them at MSU was a really cool experience for me. And, I've always just been involved in athletics my whole life. So that's kind of just where my love and my passion comes from with that. So.
Yeah, it sounds like training was a natural fit for you after your athletic career. You grew up in Indiana, and then now you went to Michigan State. So I know we were talking before the show. So you actually graduated in 2019 or 2020?
2020. Yeah, 2020
Okay.
is when I graduated from MSU.
So fairly recently, and what a time to graduate and start looking for a job. It was in the middle of COVID. It's not every day that you're trying to look for a job in the training industry when every gym is shut down in the middle of COVID. So I'm sure that was a initial setback for you, or initial barrier to entry for the industry because of everything that was happening with the pandemic at that point. But how did that kind of, in a way, alter your career path? And do you believe that kind of everything happens for a reason and everything worked out the way it should have?
Yeah. Looking back on it, obviously 2020 was a hard year for everybody, for a lot of different reasons for a lot of people. And I think we all have our own stories of where we were when the world kind of started to shut down and everything. And I remember exactly where I was when things started to happen and all of that. I used to work with men's and women's basketball at MSU during my time there, and we were all sitting in the weight room. We were sitting in the weight room, me, my friend Steven, who is another coach there, and then Coach Marshall at the time. We're all sitting in the weight room. The guys are on the court having practice. We're sitting in the weight room watching the Big Ten tournament happen at the same time. And as soon as practice was about to end, we were hopping on the bus to get ready to go down to Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament. And then with halftime of the game comes on, we see everybody start to head to the locker rooms, and the announcement goes across the bottom of the screen, hey, we're canceling the rest of the tournament. All the COVID stuff starts to come about more and more, and we all kind of look around at each other because we know what the rest of our schedule is going to be for the rest of the day. So kind of our first thought was, well, who's got to go tell Izzo that we're not getting on the bus to go to Indianapolis now, right? But yeah, I am somebody who firmly believes everything happens for a reason. And going through that experience, graduating in 2020, I had a job lined up. I was going to go be a head strength coach for the Wareham Gatemen out in Massachusetts for the Cape Cod League. And I mentioned I played baseball all the way through college, and my initial thought, what I wanted my career path to be, was I was going to take this opportunity that I had got for the Cape League to be a head strength coach coming right out of college, being somebody who is younger, and kind of use that as a way to get more experience, network, and get myself into pro baseball, which is initially what I really wanted to do. Baseball had been a part of my whole life, and I learned baseball from my dad, who's always been a big influence on me. And I was like, I'm going to take this opportunity in Massachusetts and use that to grow into a professional career, in pro baseball. Then, May comes around, graduation happens, and 2 weeks after I graduate, I'm packing up all my stuff. I'm at my parents' house. I got my bags filled up, and I'm getting ready to throw everything in the car. And I get a call from our GM at the time, and he calls me and goes, "Hey, Coy, I'm so sorry. We're shutting the league down. We're not going to have a season this year. We don't even know if we can let people into Massachusetts right now." So I'm like, well, thank you for the call. I understand. It was a big bummer for me at the time, but like I mentioned, I'm kind of glad everything played out the way that it did. And I spent the summer applying to every opportunity that I could look for, different schools, different organizations. And it was tough. So really my first job that I ended up applying for and getting, was unemployment, which wasn't how I pictured going about it coming out of graduation. But, just applying to different jobs and not hearing anything back, and, nobody knew if we were going to play sports the next year or not. So everybody was not sure if they can hire people, who they can bring on, what's going on. So it was just kind of sitting in a limbo for a while. And kind of where I ended up now is, I knew a friend of mine who I used to intern with at Cressy Sports Performance. He reached out to me and said, hey, I'm at Pinnacle right now. The business owner is thinking of expanding and doing all these things, but he knows we need another guy. Would this be something you'd be interested in? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I got nothing else going on right now. Absolutely, would love to. So I got to meet Nick, who is a business owner at Pinnacle, talk to him, learn about his backstory. He's from Illinois. He's another Midwest guy. So immediately we kind of hit it off, and we got to learn a lot about each other, and I got to learn a lot about what the idea here with Pinnacle was. And initially started as a baseball facility, just training baseball athletes, and part of my role, part of my job moving down to Georgia and help growing out our performance side of things was to do that, to build the performance side, add athletes of all different sports, and just kind of see what we can do, what we can make of this. And I kind of took a chance because at the time, the world was turning over. It was still 2020 at the time. And I told myself, you know what, I'm going to give myself a year. I'm going to take a chance on myself. I'm going to move down to Georgia. I'm going to see what we can turn this opportunity into, starting a brand new business, starting a brand new facility, right, to add multiple athletes, add multiple sports in here. And I would do it all over again. It was a really cool experience. And then, we're still growing things out. We're still growing as a facility, growing as a team, and growing as a staff. But just everything has been a really fun and really cool way of going about that. And, I don't think had those things happened to me in the past, losing my job before it had started and kind of going through all those different experiences, I'm happy I went through all those things because it pointed me to where I'm at now.
Yeah, I can't imagine having your bags packed and ready to go off in the car to your first job out of college, and then the rest of the summer you're spent kind of searching for your first job after you have that rescinded, obviously because of COVID. But I think that's the first time I've heard my first job was unemployment. That's a first. So I'm sure you're not alone. I'm probably pretty confident that there's many others during that time period of 2020 that were right in the same boat as you, struggling to find a job, especially in your area where gyms, especially because of contact exposure with COVID, was all shut down. So now fast forward to Pinnacle, where you are today. Obviously, things are up and running, and you've expanded your operations and you've expanded your role within Pinnacle. But you mentioned that it was more of a baseball facility. You started, I think it was a 9,000 square foot facility, more with baseball batting cages and everything at the start. But now you've expanded to the performance training side of things. Can you talk about how it was being faced with expanding that? Like, was it a daunting task to have to start to expanding that side, and what your role in expanding that side is, and where you started to where you are today with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really all kind of started before I even got to move into Georgia. So I came down to meet with Nick, kind of check the place out, and then head back up to Indiana for, a month and a half or so to pack up my things, get some living situations sorted out. But, when I came down, I was expecting some things to kind of, already be put into place. The building, the floor, all that sort of stuff. Really the only thing we had was the space. We had no floor plan. We had no equipment. Really the only things we had were what we had on our baseball side. And the baseball side, coming down, we had a couple batting cages. We have 2 batting cages on one side. We have a couple pitching mounds. We have some plyo walls that all of our guys throw into. And then we had I remember we had one rack that was bright red, and we had some med balls and some dumbbells in the back, and that was our weight room. I think we maybe had a trap bar in there also. But that was our weight room. And, for the first few months, that was it. And those guys have been doing that down here since before I got here, training guys in the back, using this small little square footage of space, with guys hitting right next to them, guys throwing baseballs back and forth. And we're only having guys throw one direction, so making sure nobody's getting hit with the ball while we're over here, trying to lift and throw med balls and do all of that stuff too. But, kind of putting all that together, it was daunting because, we were starting, it almost felt like we were starting from scratch, right? Not necessarily in terms of client base, because, we had the baseball athletes, so we knew we were going to transition them right over, and that was going to be easy for them, right? But starting from scratch in terms of, well, now we got to fill this new 9,000 square foot space with turf, with rubber, with equipment, with all sorts of things. We got to, put systems in place. How we did things in the past is not necessarily how we're going to do them now, because it's going to be all new, not just for the kids, but it's going to be new for all of us too, right? So that kind of month and a half that I had at home before I got to move back down to Georgia and kind of really kickstart things, was spent, building floor plans out, checking equipment and making sure all the measurements are right, so we're not using too much space, and we're using just enough space, right, in terms of where the equipment's going to go, how we're going to build it out, what do we need, how much of everything do we need, right? And then it was daunting, but it was also a lot of fun for me too. And the reason I say everything kind of happens for a reason is because I've always had the dream of, when I was going through college and knowing that getting into training is what I really want to do, of being able to design my own facility. And not that I'm the business owner, but being able to, design a floor plan and pick out equipment and help piece everything together and help put systems in place. And just to be a part of that, was really a blessing and was really cool. And it was something that I didn't realize it when it was happening at the time, and, losing that first job. Like I said, I didn't realize it at the time, but I kind of lucked into the dream job that I wanted to have, which is why coming to work every day is so much fun for me, right? Just being able to be a part of this and, have a big hand in everything that we've got to build has been really special for me. So it was daunting. It was a lot. There's still a lot that goes into it because we're not even 2 years old yet. So we're still building a lot of things out, and trying to be the best that we can be from a staff standpoint and from a facility standpoint. But it's been a lot of fun and a blessing up to this point. Mm-hmm.
It's always good to get perspective from a trainer who's early stage in their career. I know you said that it was obviously disappointing not to get that first job that you had lined up out of college, but it really was a blessing in disguise to land this job with Pinnacle. And it's also nice that you were kind of part of the foundation. So you were at the kind of the base level. You were kind of in as things were starting to evolve at Pinnacle. It seems like you came in at the perfect time. Like obviously 2020 was a tough year, but it was a great opportunity for not only Pinnacle to expand, but you to really kind of lead that expansion, designing floor plans, figuring out how much equipment you need, and then really expanding the client base as well. I know that's not all done with you, but you obviously had a big hand in that as well. Can you talk a little bit about, now you have two sides of this facility, you have expanded, you have a performance side that you've kind of built out, and you've had a large part in designing that performance side. But can you talk about how you've actually expanded the clientele base to use the facility that you've now built out? I know a lot of the early athletes were baseball focused, and it was somewhat, you said it was somewhat easy to kind of transition them into the performance trimming as well. But from social media perspective and kind of how we got connected, we see Evan Engram and Andrew Thomas and all these NFL stars and guys at LSU playing college football. Like, who are all these guys that you got, and how did you guys get connected, or how did you start expanding to Giants and Jaguars and all these different teams that you now deal with?
Yeah, so it's it's a really cool story, actually. So Coach JT, who is he's our amazing speed coach here. He's one of my best friends. And I'm just so lucky that him and I get to be partners through all of this and work together. Him and Evan actually got to grow up together, playing what they call down here in Georgia, we call it Pee Wee football in the Midwest. They call it pound ball down here, that I've got to learn. So they actually, they grew up together. They knew each other. It's a really cool story. And Evan was kind of the guy who came in who got to start that for us. He was our first NFL guy who came in, and he actually went through a couple workouts with Coach JT and with Coach Jake, who is another one of our strength coaches here, the summer before I arrived, when it was still just a baseball facility, and loved it. And then he comes back the next off season, and then we have this whole new facility that he gets to be exposed to, and he that first off season with him was awesome, and him and I got to connect and just kind of grow a bond. And through all of that, through the great work and just through the relationships, through Coach JT, through Evan, and all those guys who all know each other, what's really cool is they're also all from here, right? So they know each other. They all played high school ball against each other. They all a couple of the guys all went to Georgia together. And they come in every day, and it's just like their family, right? Those ties have always been there, and they come in here, and they're family from the moment they walk in. And I think, to me, that's part of why things have kind of grown the way that it has, and we get to work with so many amazing guys on lots of different teams, because they come in, it's a family environment, they all know each other, they get to joke around, right? They get to dog on each other, talk about what it was like, playing SEC football, talking about what it was like in high school ball, right? And just being part of that environment is really cool. And then when they go back into season, and we had a great off season of work, and those guys go out and they show out on the field, and then next off season rolls around and people get to talk to them. Hey, where did you go? What was it like? And they get to talk about not just the training, but the experience and how much fun it was for them and how much they just love being in the building and being around and just being part of that team, being a part of that family atmosphere.
Yeah, I think something that's underrated, and everybody looks at training as just, it's part of like your work for them. It's part of, keeping their bodies in, top performance shape for their respective sports. But you spend so much time doing it, like kind of the feel of the gym and the experience is something that's not really talked about a lot. It has to be a place where you're comfortable, where you like to go every single day, to try to actually enjoy it. Obviously, the people that you deal with, like yourself, the trainers, forming those bonds and relationships is also very important. Can you talk about, so you have these professional athletes, but you're still relatively early in your training career. What was it like to get that first NFL or collegiate athlete that you're training, and now you're responsible for building their workout plan and actually taking them through the workouts? Like, was that intimidating at first, or was it just like any other client that you've trained at any other point in your career?
To me, it was just like any other client, right? Just getting to learn Evan, and I talk all the time with our interns and with their staff and all of that, because like you mentioned, that family environment, that atmosphere with those guys, with all of our guys, whether it's the high school kids or the youth kids or the pro guys, right? We want to show that we're here for them, right? We're here for them. We're here to help get them better, but we care about them as people too. And nobody necessarily cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that, to me, has really been a big part of what drives our culture and our environment here. But just treating those guys like we would anybody else, right? And I think that they respect that too. They enjoyed being coached hard. They enjoyed being told when, hey, we need to do something this way instead of that way, right? Those guys want that. They're professional athletes for a reason, because they enjoy that hard coaching. And us being able to be honest with them. The more we can be honest with them and open with them, the more they're going to buy into what we're saying, and the more that they know that we care about them as a person and not just them as the athlete, again, the more they're going to kind of buy in to what we have to say from a training perspective too, because they know we have their best interest at heart, not just making them better on the field, which is our goal, but the more we could show that we care about them, the more they're going to buy into that too.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to get the athletes to kind of buy into, what you're doing and how you're doing it. And something that we talk about in a lot of our episodes with trainers is communication. Like the communication and the why behind what you're doing is extremely important, because it's easier for you as a trainer to understand, oh, we're doing this workout and we're working on these things to try to help propel your game on the field. But it's also just as important to try to relay that to the athlete for the times that they're not with you, or when they are with you, they want to know. And obviously there's, training has really grown over the past 20 years, and their social media, and you can see where, your teammates or your friends are working out, and you really want to know, whoever you're working with, why are we doing this? What's the game plan moving forward, and how is this beneficial to me? So I think that's something that you're doing a great job of. Obviously, you're expanding. You have a lot of word of mouth through your athletes, which is always a good sign for an expanding business, is that your athletes, they're coming back year after year, and they're telling their teammates and other friends from the area about your gym, which is great. I know you talked about, you start to form these bonds with some of these players, and I'm sure you follow them pretty closely on Sunday or for the college guys on Saturday. And obviously the baseball guys, they have a long season where you can kind of follow along with them as well. But obviously training is great, but what perks or benefits have you kind of had as a trainer? Do you get phone calls after certain games, or in season type stuff? Have you been to any games? Have you gone on any trips to visit some of your clients in season? Has there been any of that to this point?
Yeah, I would say myself and just us as a staff, we always try to get out and watch our guys as much as we can, whether it's traveling to the games, let's get together and watch the guys on TV and just see how they're doing, going to all the high school games, going to the younger kids' games, right? Just getting out to see all of our athletes, to me, is the biggest perk, right? They get to see me every day when they come in and train, but I know ultimately what they love to do is play their sport. So to me, just being able to go out and support them and see them do what they really love and what they really enjoy doing, that to me is the biggest perk of my job. And that's really what I love about what we do, just being able to see the kids play, go out. That to me is the best part of my job, day in and day out. Getting a call from the guys or getting a text from the guys like, hey, how was your weekend? How's the family? How's the dog, right? Just talking to them, just being able to have a relationship with them outside of training is really special. And of course, being able to watch them play is always a lot of fun, right? From the youth kids all the way up to the pro guys.
So you work with athletes of all different ages, obviously youth in high school, all the way up to collegiate and professional. Do you find a difference in motivating those players or keeping them motivated? I know, obviously, from a social media perspective, we always see the highlights of your training, but there's a lot of time that's not on social media where you have to, depending on the day and kind of the headspace of that athlete, maybe they had a rough day, or maybe they're not feeling well, or whatever the case is, they're coming back from an injury and they're trying to get remotivated. Do you find it more difficult to motivate younger high school athletes, or maybe the college and professional guys, or would you say that most of your athletes are pretty motivated on their own?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say I find necessarily a difference between the older athletes and the younger athletes. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely some athletes are just more self-motivated. And that to me, I think is the biggest separator. We've had kids that come in, it's obvious that they're super motivated from the day that they walk in. And a lot of times where I find that is a lot of our business has been word of mouth. We're on social media, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, right? But the biggest bulk of how we've been growing our business is through a lot of word of mouth. And what's been new to me, or at least something that would be different from when I was in high school or when I was in college, is a lot of times it's not the parents that reach out to me to come in and start training. A lot of times it's the kids. The kids will reach out. It's them who are taking that first step, and they're taking that initiative to reach out to, whether it's myself or Coach JT, email the facility, whatever it might be. And that to me shows, okay, this kid is serious, right? They're taking time out of their day to do research on who we are, who I am, who any of our coaches are, and they feel that this is a good place for them to be so that they can get better and take their athletic career seriously. And that shows me that when I have a kid reach out on their own, that they're very self-motivated to come in. And I know it's not going to be a struggle for myself or any of the other coaches on staff to push them to get to where they want to be. Now, you do always have some kids on the other flip side, right? Mom and dad reach out. This may be what, dad wants them to come here and train, right? Mom wants them to be involved in something. And as long as we're a place that any kid can come in and call home, that's great, right? But I feel like how our culture is, because it's such a positive environment with everybody pushing each other, sometimes the best clients you have, sometimes your best clients may be the clients that you don't have, right? The ones who maybe aren't super motivated, maybe the ones that, it's mom and dad pushing it more so than the kid who wants it for themselves, right? And sometimes those kids, if they find themselves in an environment where they may not thrive, or it's a very positive culture and a very positive, hard-working environment, sometimes those kids tend to weed themselves out, I would say. But to me, finding those kids that are super motivated, a lot of times they find you, and that to me shows that they're really dedicated in pushing their career forward.
Yeah, most people I would assume who you're dealing with are pretty self-motivated. I know you deal with a lot of big-time athletes, but a lot of the youth athletes, right? They come to you for a reason, and not all youth athletes work with trainers like yourself, but I'm assuming that those are pretty motivated, the ones that come through your doors. So we're going to start to wrap up here in a few minutes, but future plans. So you've been at Pinnacle for just about 2 years at this point. Obviously, I'm sure you're not done expanding. You're not done growing at this point. Pinnacle is just the beginning. But how do you see your role expanding, and where do you see Pinnacle going? Let's just say in the next 5 years. Like, where do you hope for Pinnacle and yourself to be as a trainer?
Where would I hope Pinnacle and myself to be in the next 5 years? It's something I tend to think about a lot, because this is truly a place that I love, and I want nothing more than for us to be one of those leaders in the industry that, whether you're a professional athlete, a collegiate athlete, a high school kid, a parent of an athlete, somebody where we can be a place of education, a place where people can call home and that it's safe for them, and when they come in they feel like family. That's the culture that I believe we have now, and that's the culture that I believe we always strive to have in the next 5 years, and just that we can be that positive environment for anybody and continue to grow, right? We're not done growing. We're not done expanding. It would be really cool in the next 5 years to keep adding pieces, keep adding clientele, keep seeing guys and girls, female athletes, male athletes keep coming through the door, right? Combine preparation is something we've thought about before. Maybe that's in our future in the next couple of years or so. We have a few guys who are playing collegiate ball right now that we're really excited about, and we're really happy for them. They're having great seasons. BJ Ojulari, Miles Murphy, Jaden Hazelwood, a couple of guys, they're out there. They're killing it right now. So all the love and support to them. That's something we always talk about a lot of the time. For myself, as a coach and as a trainer, hopefully I can just continue to grow into my role. I'm the director of sport performance here, and hopefully I can just continue to show that I'm I'm worthy and show that I can, I'm able to have the position that I have. Show that I'm continue to be qualified for the job. I'm somebody, I'm never done learning. I want to be a lifelong learner. I want to teach all of our interns to be lifelong learners, and to push themselves and, show them that your career can be whatever you want it to grow into.
I think it's extremely important to
whatever
kind of
you
start
want to grow
yourself
into,
with
whatever
that
you want
daily
to
discipline.
make for yourself,
Always
speak it into
consistently,
existence,
wanting to
and then
learn
go
more,
after it,
and
right? Whether
kind of
it's
being a
here
sponge around
at
other
Pinnacle,
trainers or kind of
whether it's
listening to
somebody
feedback
owning
of
their own
athletes
facility
is
one day.
extremely important for you
Just
early in
me
your career
growing,
to
continuing
really
to be
understand
hopefully a positive
how to serve
influence
your clients,
on other
understand
coaches,
that you
other
need to keep
athletes
pushing
in the
yourself to
industry.
learn as much as you
That's what
can,
I want for
because
myself in the
in
next 5
all of our
years,
industries,
just to
we're
continue
never
to do
done
that.
learning. There's always something else that you can learn, or a mentor that you can learn from, and you really do have to speak it into existence. Over time, the more that you do that, it will start to become a reality slowly but surely. To wrap up, something I ask everybody in closing on our show. You've only been at Pinnacle for under 2 years, so maybe it's a little different, and an obvious answer would be COVID, right, the pandemic. But I always ask, what would you tell yourself, now, and what setbacks have you had? But what would you tell yourself after 2 years at Pinnacle about how this process would play out that you didn't know then that you know today? Or would you change kind of anything, or would you leave it as is now that you've kind of been through the 2 years and you've taken that you said it was a year, you're just going to take a chance on yourself and move down there. Would you change anything in your process so far?
Man, looking back, from graduating up until now, these last couple of years, I don't really know if I would change a whole lot. Just getting the opportunity to build out the new facility, be a part of that. I don't know if I would change a whole lot. There's been a lot of nights, staying in the office, maybe having an overnight or two in the office, just putting the extra time in. But it's been a lot of fun, and I get a lot of, because I'll hear from parents, or I'll hear from friends, you work too much. You're putting a lot of time in here, and anytime I go and speak at a school, people always ask about work-life balance, and Pete Dupuis is somebody who I follow, another mentor of mine, interning from CSP, and Eric, talked about work-life balance before, and that's why I say I don't know if I would change a whole lot, because I've put a lot of time, and our staff has put a lot of time in, and the team we have here is amazing, and I can't thank them enough for all the efforts and everything that they put in day in and day out to help make my job easier and to help benefit all the athletes. But the reason I say I don't think I would change a whole lot is because this is where I've wanted to dedicate my time, and this is what I've wanted to put 110% of my effort into. And
it's great to hear that
I'm doing
you're
that.
so passionate about what you do every single day.
I feel like
obviously, people are
has.
saying you're spending a lot of time,
I feel like
and
it's going to
kind of
continue
say,
to
hey,
do so.
work-life balance. You might want to start thinking about that. But when you're truly passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work.
Like I mentioned
it just
before,
feels like something that you're enjoying waking up every single day to do. And even I'm sure on the weekends you're going out and watching the kids play their sports who you train. That's part of quote unquote your work, but it's something that you genuinely enjoy, which is great. So you seem to love what you do. The athletes, I'm sure, really appreciate your support and everything that you do for them. So we do thank you for coming on the show, Coy. It was great to hear your story. We will probably get you on the show again in a few years just to kind of hear where it goes from here. We will will definitely be following Pinnacle and all your future endeavors of how you grow the facility, bring on new trainers, maybe grow a second location, whatever the case may be in the next few years and whatever the future holds. So once again, Coy Flynn, Pinnacle Performance, appreciate you coming on the show, and we're looking forward to where things go from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.